Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. He doesn't need that? No, I don't need it.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Indeed, all praise and thanks are for Allah. We praise and thank Him, we seek His help and we ask His forgiveness. We take refuge in Allah from the evil of ourselves and from our sinful deeds. Whoever Allah guides, no one can mislead, and whoever He leaves to stray, no one can guide. And I bear witness that there is no one worthy of worship except Allah. He is one, having no partners. And I bear witness that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His servant and His messenger. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon him and upon his family and his companions. Amma ba'd, to proceed. Inshallah, we'll continue with our study of how to tackle shaitan. But today, what I want to look at, inshallah, is the topic of scams and scammers. Okay. And you may wonder, how does this relate to shaitan? Well, really, if we look at the definition of scam and scammers, we see that really he's very much a scammer. He was and he is. So if you're not clear as to what a scam is, and the thing is nowadays it's commonplace, isn't it? There's so many sort of scams going on, and now with the advent of the internet and all these other sort of developments, it's made it possible for people to try and scam in ways that wasn't possible in the past. Okay, but it's been going on. Scamming is something which has gone on really from, as I said, from the creation of Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam, and their interactions with Iblis and Shaitan. So what does it mean? Well, a scam is really, it's like a scheme which involves deception, yes, or fraud. Yes, there's deception involved. It's a scheme where deception is involved. And we could use other words for scam and scammers, like for instance, misleaders. They mislead, they deceive, they're deceivers, are they not? Or in the past, I don't know if this expression is so common now, but con artists, we used to call them. Yes? All these things. And really, these descriptions are very appropriate to Shaitan's activities. And in fact, he owns up to it as well. You know, you've heard this verse, or this part of this verse many times before. I'll just mention it again, inshallah. This part of the verse. This is in Surah Ibrahim, alayhi salam, if you want to look it up. Surah number 14, and verse 22. And it goes, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وقال الشيطان لما قضي الأمر إن الله وعدكم وعد الحق ووعدتكم فأخلفتكم. That's the first bit of it. That Satan will say when the matter is decided. See, judgment has occurred. It's in the akhirah, this is. Satan will say, when the matter is decided, indeed Allah made the promise of truth to you. He says, I promised you. I too promised you. But I failed in my promises. I betrayed you, or I deceived you. See, so he's owning up to it. The difference between Allah's true promise, and the commentators, they say, in that verse, it's referring to the promise of resurrection and judgment. Yes, that there is life after death. And there are consequences to our actions in this world. It's Allah's promise, the promise of truth. And He makes all sorts of promises in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He promises believers. So wa'ad Allah. Allah promised believers, for instance, Jannat, gardens, paradise. He promises unbelievers hellfire as well. It's described as a promise. So Allah's promises of truth. And Shaitan admits it. Indeed, Allah made the promise of truth to you. I promised you, but I betrayed you. I deceived you. This is like scamming. Yes. Now, let's have a look at how he scammed our father and mother, yes, Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayha salam. Now this scene, again, which you may be familiar with, and it comes up in different parts of the Quran, but let's take it from Surah Al-A'raf, Surah number 7. And it says, يَا آدَمُ اسْكُنْ أَنْتَ وَزَوْجُكَ الْجَنَّةَ فَكُلَا مِنْ حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا وَلَا تَقْرَبَا هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةَ فَتَكُونَ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. You see. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing Adam. Oh Adam, dwell you and your wife in the garden and eat from it as you wish, whatever you wish, you see. There's freedom, but do not approach this tree in case you become one of the wrongdoers. You're familiar with this, yes? So they had freedom in the garden, one prohibition. They were told not to approach that tree. But then it goes on to say, فَوَسْوَسَ لَهُمَ الشَّيْطَانِ. Shaitan started, he whispered to them. You see. And what does he say? It says a bit later in that verse. It says, وَقَالَ مَا نَهَاكُمَا رَبُّكُمَا عَنْ هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةَ إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ مَلَكَيْنِ أَوْ تَكُونَ مِنَ الْخَالِدِينَ. He says, your Lord has only prohibited you, this tree, to prevent you from becoming angels, from being angels or immortals. And then he goes on. It says, وَقَاسَمَ لَهُمَا إِنِّي لَكُمَا لَمِنَ النَّاصِحِينَ. It says that he swears to them that indeed I am one of your sincere advisors. And then it says, فَدَلَّهُمَا بِغُرُورٍ. He caused their fall through deception. You see? Now it's a scam, and let's look at the elements of this. And it's so interesting that the elements or some of the features of this are so similar to these modern day scams. Now I assume most of you are familiar with these scams. You know, for many years there are all these emails promising people that there's this huge amount of money waiting in some bank account for them, or that they'd won in some national lottery and all they had to do was pay certain admin fees in order to get access. Scams of that nature. There are scams where people call people and say, your computer has these viruses. We're from Microsoft or whoever. Yes, your computer has these viruses, but we can get rid of them. And then they go through this lengthy procedure. Yes? And what they're doing is actually they're gaining control of your computer, and then later on your bank details and so on. Many scams, so many scams, and WhatsApp messages, emails, all over the place. But the features, very interesting, the features of that original scam, we might say, have so many similarities to modern day scams. So inshallah, in these khutbahs, there'll be advice, inshallah, of how to both tackle these modern day scams, yes, of human beings, and some of them really may be from the shayateen. We know that there are shayateen from jinn and from human beings. And really, what some of these scammers are willing to do, it's disgraceful. People are willing to take a pensioner's life savings, for instance. And they prey on the vulnerable as well. They go for people who have very little knowledge, say, of IT. Yes? But we need to look at the reasons for why we fall for these scams in the first place. From the outside, many of us might think, well, why did you fall for that? Wasn't it obvious? Wasn't the bad spelling and the bad grammar, didn't that make it obvious to you that this couldn't be from Amazon or some reputable company, or yes? But we fall for it, and it's really interesting to see how Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam fell for it. So, what shaitan does, you see, he starts in that description I gave, he starts by lying to them. Yes, he says, because he said, وَقَالَ مَا نَهَاكُمَا, he says that Allah only prevented you or forbade you from this tree to prevent you from being angels or immortals. It's a lie. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He told them why He did not want them to, He told them why they shouldn't approach the tree, in case they became wrongdoers. Now shaitan, he lies to them, and this is one of the features of scammers. They lie. But not only does he lie, he entices them, you see. He offers them something. There's a promise of what? Being an angel, or the promise of being immortal. There's an attractive thing that he's offering them. He's not just, he lies about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is very, very serious, of course. Yes? But he entices them. And this is also why sometimes we fall for scams. They're quite attractive, are they not? Yes? And then, not only does he lie, but he actually lies about lying, because he says, he swears to them that he is a sincere advisor. Minan nasihin, that he's giving them nasiha, sincere advice. And they fall for it. Now, one of the reasons they fell for it is they forgot. Because Wanasiya, it's mentioned in the Quran that Adam, he forgot. There was a contract between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he forgot, you see. And sometimes this happens, because had they remembered what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said about not approaching the tree, then the outcome may have been different. So one of the factors is they forgot. And we forget, you see. Do we not? I mean, despite the fact that we've been years in the midst of all these scams that go on, we still sometimes forget not to click on that link. Do we not? But it's not just forgetfulness, you see. For us, there's another element, which is, we might say, wishful thinking, desire, and sometimes even greed. Yes. And it's very interesting because we're told in the Quran, and you've heard this verse many times before, يَعِدْهُمْ وَيُمَنِّيهِمْ وَمَا يَعِدْهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ إِلَّا غُرُورًا. You see that he promises them, shaitan, he promises humanity, and he stirs in them or creates in them desires, false desires, empty hopes. Yes? But what shaitan promises is nothing but deception. Again, we're told. Yes, and we're told that it's deception. And he's described in the Quran as al-gharur. According to some, this is referring to shaitan, al-gharur, the deceiver. You see, the scammer in some ways. But because it's our wishful thinking, you see, we sometimes don't see the evidence because it would be so wonderful to have that million in our bank accounts, would it not? You see, sometimes we're driven by fear, like the fear of the virus and so on, but sometimes, wouldn't it be wonderful? We feel this, you see, and so then we ignore evidences. And this is what wishful thinking is. And when we're told, يَعِدُهُمْ وَيُمَنِّهِمْ, he creates in them desires. And يُمَنِّهِمْ, very interestingly, is the same root as the word amani, which is used in the Quran for wishful thinking. He creates, yes? And this is something we fall for. So we don't see the evidences because there's something that we desire, something we want. And this seemed to happen to them, to Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam. I'm not saying that they were greedy or that they had certain desires, but they fell for the deception. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه وإنه غفور رحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Now we could look a bit more into the details of this interaction, and as I say, it's very, very interesting, but we don't have enough time. But I'll just mention one more thing in relation to that original scam, you might say, which is that, you see, shaitan, he pretends that he is their sincere advisor, you see. And in a lot of these modern day scams, you'll notice that the people who are the scammers are pretending to be doing us good. They are facilitating us getting access to that money that's waiting for us, or they are removing those viruses that are supposed viruses that are on our computer. Yes? They're pretending to be sincere. And of course, this is something we fall for. That sort of connection. I know someone who, he was scammed on one of these phone calls. He was elderly at the time, but they phoned him, and what they did, and then it was someone with an Asian accent, but called Harry or John or whatever. That should give it away a bit. But anyway, what they did is they got someone in their office that spoke the same language as this person, you see. And so there was that connection, that contact, that friendliness, you see. So this is often a feature. Anyway, in the remaining time, how do we protect ourselves from all this? Yes? How do we avoid the scams? And really, as well as avoiding the dunya scams, which we must try and avoid, of course, inshallah. I've known people, over the years, for one relative of mine, actually, he, in Bangladesh, he, highly educated man, highly knowledgeable, yes, a professional, practicing. He fell for one of these scams, and because they'd made a connection, you see. They'd made a connection. I won't go into the details now. And it made it all the more, it made it plausible for him. You see, it made it seem possible. You see. But he lost a lot of money. Now, so there are, and a pensioner losing her life savings. What a tragedy, you see. And that's why I say some of these people who are doing these things, really, the shaitanic behavior. Yes, as I say, there are shayateen from the human beings. They don't seem to care. So we do need to protect ourselves from them. But actually, the greater protection, we need to protect ourselves from shaitan's scams. Because those scams, the dunya scams, the human beings, yes, we may lose money, we may lose life savings or whatever, but it's dunya. It's wealth or property, it's money. But shaitan's scams could actually affect our akhirah. So it becomes vital. And just mention just a few features very, very quickly. One, these are tools against all these scams. One, knowledge. Knowledge, you see. If we know, this is one of the reasons why I've been talking about shaitan for the last 6-7 months or whatever. We need knowledge, how to tackle him, how he functions. Yes, he's described as our enemy, aduwwun lakum. He's an enemy to you, so we need to know how he functions. Yes. And here's one bit of knowledge, you see. With all these scams, there's this very interesting thing. You know, none of these people, the human beings that are doing these things, they're not holding guns to our heads, are they? You know, we're not under their control. It's actually very simple to avoid these scams in terms of what we need to do. You can just, not respond to the email or the WhatsApp message. We can put the phones down. We don't have to give them our bank details. You see, some of the scams are sophisticated, but a lot of it, all you do is just put the phone down. You don't interact with them. Yes? And shaitan also, similarly, we know, not about interaction, but we know in that verse that I mentioned, that وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانُ لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَعَدَكُمْ وَعْدَ الْحَقِّ وَوَعْدْتُكُمْ فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ, I mentioned earlier. And then what does he say? وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ إِلَّا أَنْ دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. He says that I had no power, no sultan, no authority over you, except to call you, to invite you. Yes? But you responded to me. So don't blame me, blame yourselves. And we're told, interestingly, in the Quran, we're told, Inna kayda shaitani kana da'ifa. Indeed, shaitan's plots have always been weak. It's not that he has all this power. Yes, and it's the same thing with the modern day scammers. We're letting ourselves fall for these things, you see. Now that bit of knowledge can help us. Yes, all you do, we just switch it off. We don't connect. Yes, we don't accept the invitations. Shaitan can order us even. It says in the Quran, إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالسُّوءِ وَالْفَحْشَاءِ وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That he but orders you, he commands you, orders you to evil or sin and fahsha, it's shameful deeds. Yes? And to say about Allah that which you have no knowledge. But very interesting, these orders, we don't have to obey him. He can order us. He can invite us, he can whisper, he can try and tempt. He can do all these things, and he functions in various ways. But we don't have to respond to it. But we need to remember Allah. That's one of the things, you see, one of the biggest tools, and perhaps the biggest tool in combating shaitan is remembrance, dhikr, remembrance of Allah, reminders. Yes? That it's Allah He's the one that's given us the true promise. These are false promises that shaitan makes, you see. So reminder, that's one tool. Or we may say taqwa, because sometimes we're in a state of ghafla, in a state of heedlessness. We lose sight of akhirah. We're too immersed in dunya. The attractiveness of some sort of business scam. It's very alluring, you suddenly can become a millionaire. In those moments, we're forgetting akhirah. Quite possibly. So, taqwa, mindfulness, or God consciousness, and reminders. This is one. Now, just two more, and I'll just mention it in part because we haven't got time to go into detail. One is, though, patience, sabr. These are Islamic principles. Patience. Think about it. The scams that shaitan offers or tries to involve us in, to do with dunya pleasures, instant gratification. Yes? It's all dunya, it's all short term. I think I've said this before, short term gratification, instant gratification, sacrificing long term fulfillment. He's a short-term. Now, one of the things we know, and I think we'd all agree with this, that the pleasures of this world do not compare with the pleasures of Jannah, inshallah. There's no comparison in terms of the intensity or the quantity or whatever, and Jannah is eternal. But we have to wait, you see, because the pleasures of this world and the haram pleasures of this world, the things that shaitan will be calling us to, inviting us to, they're instant, are they not? Most of them. Right now. No waiting. So some sabr, some patience, and inshallah, no house in this world is going to compare to the mansions or palaces in Jannah. No being will be as attractive as the inhabitants of Jannah. Yes, we know this, and yet some of us can't wait. So sabr. And finally, we'll end on this, inshallah. Gratitude. You see. Again, shukr, a very, very important principle of Islam. Some of the reasons we fall for these scams is because of greed. We want more. We're not satisfied with what we have. We may be living comfortably, and yet we want that lottery money, as it used to be, or that huge amount waiting in our bank accounts or whatever. We want it. And it's greed. Sometimes it's greed. So a tool against that is gratitude. Yes? To feel grateful. Because if we're grateful for what we have and we're satisfied with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with, then we don't want, it doesn't bother us so much. Yeah, okay, there's this offer, and maybe there's some truth in it. But we don't have to bother. We don't have to waste our time. You see? And it's very interesting, you see, shaitan, it's said in the Quran, you see, when shaitan is having this conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you see, and he says, قَالَ فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي لَأَقُدَنَّ لَهُمْ صِرَاطَكَ الْمُسْتَقِيمَ. He says, because you caused me to err, I'm going to line wait for them on your straight path. And then, ثُمَّ لَآتِيَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِهِمْ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ وَعَنْ شَمَائِلِهِمْ وَلَا تَجِدُوا أَكْثَرَهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ. He says, then I will assault them from in front of them and from behind them and from their right and from their left, and you will not find most of them to be grateful. So inshallah we can use gratitude as a tool against shaitan. It's very warm in here, but not as warm as the people that shaitan was addressing. Some say that was his khutbah in the hellfire, when he owns up to it, you see. But we do need to stop for today. Inshallah, أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه غفور رحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. Our Lord, accept this from us, for you are the all-hearing, the all-knowing. وتوب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. And turn to us in mercy, for you are the acceptor of repentance, the most merciful. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Our Lord, grant us good in this world and good in hereafter, and save us from the punishment of the fire. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. Our Lord, we have wronged ourselves, and who do not forgive us and have mercy on us will indeed be amongst the losers. Oh Allah, help us not to fall for the scams, the deception of shaitan. Oh Allah, help us to see the true promises that you have made, and to stay away from the false ones that shaitan invites us to. Oh Allah, and help us to see reality as reality, and help us to remember you and to keep akhirah, to have yaqeen in akhirah, to have firm conviction in the hereafter, O Allah, and protect us from the whisperings of shaitan. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Salamun ala al-mursalin. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wa aqimus salat.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Please straighten your rows and don't leave any gaps and pray as if it is the last prayer. It is of course a warm day, and some of you may be wearing t-shirts, some of the men, so please be careful that your t-shirt doesn't ride up at the back, because sometimes it exposes the aura. The aura is from navel to knee, so please, we don't want any builders' bottoms in here, please. And no offence to builders, of course. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Malik Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء نحوا سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألهاكم التكاثر حتى زرتم المقابر كلا سوف تعلمون ثم كلا سوف تعلمون كلا لو تعلمون علم اليقين لترون الجحيم ثم لترونها عين اليقين ثم لتسألن يومئذ عن النعيم. Allahu Akbar. Sami Allahu liman hamida. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Brothers and sisters, there is a second Jamah, so there are people waiting outside, and it is very hot and sunny out there. It's warmer, it's cooler in here, of course. Alhamdulillah. But so please, if you can pray your sunnah at home, please do so, inshallah. I mean, it's better to anyway, if you can. Jazakumullah khairan. Off করে